Karma doesn't exist in the NBA. The draft lottery just went down, and the answer we got to who's capturing the flag is, well, the worst answer possible. Mavericks fans, I'm happy that you got such a big win after such a big loss, but I honestly hate to see an organization that did such a dastardly thing get rewarded with the #1 overall pick. So let's talk about the bad, the ugly, and I guess some of the good of Cooper Flagg going to the Dallas Mavericks, and we'll tackle some of the other implications of the draft lottery. Hello everybody, welcome to Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel, drop a like on this video, and check us out over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you would like to enjoy this as an audio-only experience. I apologize, I'm not going to be getting a Celtics-Knicks Game 4 reaction on Little Rusty Buckets out in time, but I will be recapping Game 4 and Game 3 on this channel tomorrow morning, probably tomorrow afternoon. With that said, I decided that I wanted to make this video, and that's why I am missing the ability to react to that game on time, because I didn't necessarily plan to do a reaction to this year's draft lottery. However, we got a nightmare scenario and I had to talk about it. Now, I said it in the intro, but I want to be very clear. Do not get me wrong on this, Mavericks fans. You deserve, if you're still invested at this point, you deserve to get this win. I hate that Nico Harrison and the terrible ownership of the Mavericks franchise got away with this shit. A lot of people have been discussing whether or not this was rigged. I saw a bunch of people reply to me saying that this was basically a part of the Luka trade, because there's this big conspiracy that the league itself orchestrated the Luka trade. And I don't necessarily agree with that part. However, you could definitely convince me that this lottery was rigged, because I am definitely not one to believe that the lottery does not get rigged. I don't think every single one of them is. I think that is a leap. However, when you get prospects that people really care about, I do think franchises like the Charlotte Hornets fail to end up getting that draft pick every time. When they fell into the Final Four, I was like, I know technically the chance that the Hornets get him is there, but I'm as sure as I could be they're not gonna get him, because I just didn't feel like there was any chance the NBA would allow something like that to happen. It's a very easy type of thing to rig, so I'm not one for conspiracy. However, hard not to see this as possibly a conspiracy. However, I would say if you were going to rig this lottery for Cooper Flagg, why would you choose for it to be Dallas who gets him? What exactly is the benefit, other than maybe you fear the franchise is just completely cooked? But is that not the goal of the Mavericks? Maybe in a weird roundabout way, this is trying to keep the Mavericks to stay in Dallas, because they're gonna be like, no, you can't just trade away superstar talent. What if I give you more? I don't even necessarily know that Cooper Flagg will be a superstar, and that's something that I also need to clarify up top. I am not a draft guy. I've seen a lot of Flagg footage. I've heard a lot of people talk about him, but I can't speak to personal eye test live game experience. All I know is that there is a debate as to whether or not he was actually a generational prospect. From what I can tell, he seems to be a generational defensive wing prospect regardless of everything else. But this is a huge win for the franchise. Maybe it was a backhanded win because they want to stop the Dallas migration, possibly. None of this, I'm touching in the conspiracy pool right now. None of this is very strongly founded, and none of it do I outright believe. However, none of it would I be surprised by. But whether or not this shit was rigged, if it was, the script writers absolutely dropped the pen, I guess, not the ball. The pen is their job, and they fucked this up, and it's terrible. I hate it. Mavericks fans, I'm glad you got a win. I really am. But Mavericks franchise, fuck you. You don't deserve this. And I use the word dastardly because I think dastardly is the most apt description. I'm actually going to Google what that word means, but I'm just speaking specifically vibes. Wicked and cruel. Yeah, that seems about right. Trading Luka Doncic in the manner in which they did was wicked and cruel to both Luka and the Mavericks fan base. But that stuff aside, now we're going to talk about the actual basketball. Or, well, first we're going to have to talk about a roster issue, and then we'll get to the actual basketball, which is, will this keep Kyrie Irving in town? There was a decent amount of buzz when he was seen at the last Lakers game of the season. That could possibly be a sign that he is interested in that idea. Now, I have said time and time again, again that probably better just to stick with Austin Reeves. However, given how bad Austin Reeves was in the playoffs, I don't know if that's the move. So you could theoretically say, hey, let's trade Austin Reeves for a really great center, and then we sign Kyrie Irving for much cheaper than anyone else could really get him. And we have our third option, and we have a big, we get to have our cake and eat it too. I understand why that would be attractive to Kyrie, but I also think the odds of him staying in Dallas have increased a good amount here. Primarily because I think Cooper is the type of guy who has a very, very high floor, and at the very least, he's going to end up being a high value starter early on into his career. Again, this is me talking as a novice in the draft category, but from everything I've seen, his defense should be so good, and his offense should at the very least be good enough that he is a very, very positive player and probably the third best player on this team out of the gate. However, Kyrie Irving is 30. I don't know how easily you could how you could get him to invest in Cooper Flagg as a prospect, because what if the Cooper Flagg project takes 3 years to really turn Dallas into a contender and he's 33? You know, that sounds reasonable, but what if he waits those 3 years and nothing comes of it and they're still struggling? A big positive of this is that you would have 2 stars still relatively in their prime, even if they're older and injury prone, and your third guy is someone who's going to make like 15, 16 million, whatever the top pick gets at this point now. That number keeps getting higher and higher, but it's definitely a hell of a lot lower than the $50 million that Cooper will probably be demanding when he's on his max contract. So you get 4 years where you could have the big money of Kyrie and AD and then still have a hell of a talented player at the price of under $20 million per year. So that does give you a lot of flexibility in terms of how you build the franchise, how you build up that roster. But let's talk about what Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, and Cooper Flagg would look like on the floor together. So first of all, on offense, big to big lobs all the time. I'm looking at the blueprint that the Cleveland Cavaliers have been doing with their double bigs of Allen and Mobley, and I'm saying, Cooper, I think you could throw those lobs all the time. However, there is also the chance that they want to play Cooper at the 3 and then go double bigs, center and AD, who's a center but wants to play the 4. That is definitely a possibility, but one way or the other, I just think there's going to be a lot of lobs and there's going to be a lot of short roll playmaking. Cooper and AD are both great lob targets, and they are both great passers, especially positionally. So the playmaking throughout the roster, I think Cooper will be this very big connective piece, because from what I have seen, it seems like playmaking is actually the area offensively that Cooper Flagg is most exciting with, at the very least. Maybe not what he's best at, but what he brings to the table on a level that is unique positionally. There is also going to be more help on the perimeter in terms of shot creation from Kyrie Irving. Again, speaking as a novice, I think Cooper has some question marks in that department, some question marks on his jump shot that's not always the most consistent, but definitely not someone who's going to have no perimeter creating ability by any means. So at the very least, he's going to make for a decent guy to have, catch a grenade with 5 seconds left, and hopefully he can do something with it. But then we got to go to the defensive end, and that's where things get really interesting. And I hate that I'm doing it, but this was the good. When I said, and I guess we'll talk about the good, well, here it is. Anthony Davis plus Cooper Flagg plus a center out there is going to be a ridiculous defense, because Cooper Flagg is 6'9", but he plays even bigger than that. I think he has a longer wingspan than that. 7-foot wingspan. Yeah, that's not too far off. Yeah, he has a 8'10" standing reach. He has a crazy high vertical. I think he averaged like 2 blocks in college. He averaged 1.4. So he averaged 1.4 blocks and 1.4 steals, doing that in about 30.7 minutes per game. Per 40 minutes, it gets up to 1.8 blocks. So yeah, his shot blocking as a wing, not just as a power forward, but as a small forward, then you're going to have Anthony Davis and either Daniel Gafford or Derek Lively protecting the basket. You are going to have the paint on lock. You're going to have a ton of switchability among your big men. And you're also going to be getting every damn rebound, because I believe Cooper also, he averaged 10 rebounds per game in college. So He's also a very good rebounder. His per 40 numbers, or let's just do his per 100 because that's more translates to basketball. But his per 100 possessions is 15 rebounds per game, 2.6 blocks, and 2.8 steals. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Won every damn award under the sun. He's a very, very good player, and his defense paired with Anthony Davis, paired with double bigs, it's going to be so good. Even if the perimeter defense isn't all that, it's still going to be a very good defense. And Cooper Flagg can play perimeter defense too. So you have a ton of versatility, a ton of shot blocking, a ton of rim protection, a ton of rebounding, a ton of length. The defense for the Mavericks is going to be great. And you know what? They said that defense wins championships. I don't think it's going to win them a championship with this roster. I could be wrong about that. It's possible. But like, at the very least, it's going to be defense. They've done what they wanted to. They got the defense that they wanted to. I think they have the makings of an all-time defense here. It's just a matter of how much we end up seeing Anthony Davis on the floor along with Cooper Flagg, and if Anthony Davis ends up seeing enough to be invested there in the long term. I especially think that is dependent on Kyrie Irving. Like, if Kyrie Irving leaves, I think Anthony Davis is way more likely to leave. But if you can convince Kyrie to stay, I think you convince AD to stay, and we'll see this trio stay together for at least 2 years, probably at least enough to know whether or not Cooper Flagg is actually going to be a star or he ends up being a bust, God forbid. What about the rest of this Mavericks roster? And this is mostly short-term stuff, but still, and that is a part of it, is that it is mostly short-term stuff because there isn't a lot of young players on this team. And if anything, that could be a little bit weird culturally for Cooper, but he has Clay, PJ Washington, Najee Marshall. I liked Brandon Williams in this last year's, I guess, play-in tournament, so I'm interested to see if they have a long-term plan to keep him there. And then again, you have the Gafford plus Lively stuff. Even if he's playing without Anthony Davis, that does mean that he's always going to have a good rim protector in the game. Defensively, I'm super excited for it. I actually, just from a pure X's and O's basketball standpoint, I think the defense between those three is going to be really fun. Those three being Coop, AD plus big man, whichever one it is, not Kyrie Irving, obviously. And then offensively, I think you're going to have enough. I think if, let's say Cooper Flagg's a 20-point per game caliber guy year 2, you have AD, Cooper, and Kyrie. Ugh, man, I hate that I'm saying it, but this could be the foundation of a championship team. It could be. It could be. If the offense is good enough, it could be. I am confident that they would be able to create a championship level defense at the very bare minimum. That is to assume that Cooper Flagg isn't just fully a bust. I think if he was going to be, it would be because of his offense, not be because of his offense, not his defense. Again, I don't think that's going to happen. But again, this is, you're preparing for the nightmare scenario. I think it would not work because his offense wasn't along early enough in his career. But defensively, this team should be great immediately. Now, what's interesting is, what does this mean for Cooper Flagg's career trajectory? Because his two best teammates are 30 or in their 30s, early 30s, and they're injury prone, which isn't to say that he won't get a couple of good years with them, but it is only going to be a couple of good years. I don't expect Anthony Davis's game and Kyrie Irving's game too, but probably especially Anthony Davis's. I don't expect them to be dudes who are playing at all-star level at the age of 38. I would be very surprised by that. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I just don't think you're going to see Cooper Flagg in his prime at the same time Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis are more or less in theirs. I mean, they're not really in their prime, but they're still close and close enough to it that they're basically there. But I just don't think you're going to see a close to peak version of all three of these guys on the same team at the same time. It kind of almost reminds me, not the same by any means, because of for many reasons, but when Magic Johnson went to the Lakers and it was old ass Kareem there, it was like, yeah, you got a couple years of both of those guys being superstars with a capital S, but only like 2 of their championships were both of them at their peak. I don't even think you get that kind of window here, unless Cooper Flagg is a dude who just is really good early. Like if he's an all-star year 2 or even year 1, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. Then maybe this is a different conversation, but I don't know. He would have to be really good early, and Kyrie and AD would probably have to last a little bit longer than I think they're going to. But what this means beyond just those teammates, well, I do think he's too good of a player to just fail because of a bad franchise. Like I've seen people being like, oh, the Mavericks are not going to be capable of developing him properly. But I don't think that one necessarily begets the other. Like just because they made a stupid trade doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad at development. Now, I understand this new regime has obviously started off on the wrong foot, but their incompetence doesn't necessarily have to bleed over into development. It's more about their competence of hiring the correct people to do those jobs. But in terms of development, I mean, I don't know that there's a lot of young players who have developed especially good in Dallas other than Luka Doncic, obviously. But I mean, the Mavericks didn't stop Luka from becoming a great player. You know what I mean? I don't think they're going to stop Flag from becoming a pretty damn good one at the very least. So I don't think this is like going to stunt his career in the same way that I would have felt that would more so be the case if he went to the Charlotte Hornets. Although him and LaMelo Ball in theory could be great, but it's only in theory. I mean, so is this. So we shall see. But obviously, I would have liked to see him go somewhere else. I really like the idea of him ending up on the San Antonio Spurs, but no such luck. And I think what is mostly concerning is because this has been a franchise that clearly damaged its reputation, you know, and they also made a bad trade after it. Like, are they suddenly going to become a competent franchise that's going to do a good job building around Cooper for the next 8 years of his career, the next 9 years? Probably not. It's not they haven't put their best foot forward. That's sure. That's for sure. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm more worried about his ability to get proper help in the long term than in the short term. I think Kyrie, AD, plus some solid role players. I think the Mavericks will be a playoff team next year as long as health permits. Just to touch on some other draft lottery stuff, really just two main picks, which are who got number 2 and number 3. Giannis is probably going to get traded to the Spurs. I think I've decided that for myself, that is just what's going to happen at this point. I think they're in the position that makes the most sense, unless, of course, OKC wants him. If OKC wants Giannis, that's a different conversation. But I think there's a decent chance this pick ends up getting traded, but it is my understanding that there's like 2 or 3 guys after Cooper who have outright star potential. I think there's a big man that I was eyeing that was like a top pick. Dylan Harper is who they're projecting at number 2, and they could, I don't know, they could use a point guard. But who's the big man that I heard? I could have swore there was a big man in this lottery that wasn't Cooper. Am I crazy? Did he just fall all the way? I don't know. Whatever. Yeah, I think that pick's going to get traded. But if they get a star prospect, that's cool. And then the Sixers at number 3, what I'm interested in there is, do they try and trade that pick and use it to recoup their current core, like buff it out, maybe get some more role players in there, maybe possibly use it as an incentive to get the Paul George contract off of the books? I don't know. I think it would be better to just give up on their current roster. But this pick presents a very interesting question because they could use it to fix their current roster, but if they're smart, I think they should begin anew. I think they should clean slate this thing, and whoever they take at number 3 is one of the leading guys into that new era of the Sixers. But with that said, that was the draft lottery. Let me know what you think about Cooper Flag to Dallas. I don't like that the franchise got rewarded, but there is some cool basketball stuff here, and Mavericks fans have less reasons to cry themselves to sleep every night. So that's something. But thank you for watching. Shout out to Rudy for editing, and goodbye.